Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an upcoming big winter storm for parts of the central and southern plains back through the Tennessee Valley and into parts of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. This is going to take a similar setup and it's going to be very similar to the storm that we just went through, but the only difference is that this is going to be pushed a few hundred miles further to the south. We have more cold air into the eastern United States, and that's going to allow the system to really hit parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the coastal Northeast instead of parts in the interior Northeast and the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes, like the previous storm did. We're going to be kind of going over what happened with the previous storm and discussing what happened with that, as well as giving you my initial thoughts on this next system that's going to be moving through parts of the eastern United States. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and it is quite active for much of the country, especially that central part of the country. They've been under warnings and watches for much of this week. We have winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings for the Northwest, as well as for parts of the Southern Rockies. We have some avalanche warnings in kind of that deeper blue for parts of Utah and Colorado there, as well as some wind chill advisories for the northern plains, the central plains, and even down through parts of the southern plains and the southeast there. We have wind chill warnings in effect for parts of Texas, Louisiana, and back through parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado as well. And then we have some winter storm warnings in effect for this pink area right here for parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and into a little bit of Missouri as well. Winter weather advisories in the purples for some of these areas near Alabama, the areas surrounding Missouri, as well as for some parts of western Texas. We have some freeze warnings in effect in that dark blue for parts of southern Texas, as well as some hard freeze warnings for deep South Texas there, and also into the central Gulf states, where you have more of those hard freeze warnings for temperatures that could get as low as 28 degrees Fahrenheit or even lower than that. We have some winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories still up for central and eastern Maine, as well as some winter storm watches for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and into parts of the lower Ohio Valley. We also have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up for parts of near Chicago, as well as near northwestern Indiana, and then over southeastern Wisconsin. Right over that area, we're dealing with some lake effect right off Lake Michigan, and that's actually going to keep those storm warnings up for quite a while, because you're going to be having some intermittent snow over the day, and that could add up to another couple inches of snowfall for some of those areas. So your records for yesterday over the lower 48 states: we had a high temperature yesterday in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. They got to 91 degrees, 25 miles east of Ely, Minnesota, in northeastern Minnesota. They got to negative 46 degrees Fahrenheit. And then your highest rainfall report yesterday was in Jonesville, Texas, in northeastern Texas. They got 7 inches of rainfall. There were many reports around this area where they had over 5 inches of rainfall. So they definitely got a lot of rainfall and general precipitation for some of those areas. And then your highest snowfall report was 1 mile southwest of Hood River, Oregon, where they got 16 inches of snowfall. That's in north central Oregon in some of those higher elevations. Now let's start talking about what happened yesterday with that winter storm, because it's actually really interesting with how this actually ended up playing compared to what we were expecting. Now, some of these reports over the central part of the country, they're kind of having some map issues, so I wouldn't really rely on this too much. This is just a general idea of what happened, but they are dealing with, you can kind of see where they have little splotches where they don't have any snowfall, or they have lighter snowfall than the surrounding areas, and that's mainly just a data issue that they're having currently at the National Weather Service. So for this area, some of these reports aren't completely accurate, but the general gist of it is there. Now, we saw the forecast, and most people were forecasting, and most forecasts in general were showing that heaviest snowfall area being somewhere right around here, moving up the Ohio Valley and moving back up through parts of the Northeast. Now, what actually happened was that this was much stronger than what we were expecting, and moved closer to that high pressure, moved further to the north, and it took a track all the way up through central New England. So it went very far to the north. We saw that heaviest snowfall, instead of being in the Ohio Valley, shifted further west. Areas around Chicago got over 18 inches of snowfall, according to some preliminary reports over those areas. So there was some heavy snowfall for these areas in the western and central lakes Lakes. But as you get back through the eastern Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and the interior Northeast, really did underperform because you saw most of that precipitation actually takes a form of sleet, freezing rain, or just plain rain for parts of the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. And I'm definitely going to learn from this because I did call it correctly that I thought there were going to be some heavier reports than what some of the models were showing over Texas, Arkansas, and into Tennessee, right over that area. And that actually did end up happening. Now, the thing that I said was that this is gonna be a stronger storm as it's starting to head onto land, and then I said it would weaken. Now, if it was going to be stronger than what was anticipated on some of the models, then I should have known that this was going to stay stronger the entire event, and that would have meant that you would have had a further north and west track. So that's definitely my interpretation of what went wrong and what went wrong with my personal forecast. So I'm definitely going to learn for this, and I'm definitely going to take some notes from what happened with us. I'm going to try and improve my forecast in the future, and if you have any feedback, leave them in the comments down below. I'll definitely be open to any of your feedback on this forecast because even though it was incorrect, there are always things that you can learn from it, and I'm definitely going to take a few suggestions from you guys in the comments, and also I'm going to try and just personally improve my forecasting with some of the things that I did learn while tracking and watching this storm play out on the radar. So here's what the models are showing with this system, and we're going to start talking about your next system in today's video. So this is that big low pressure system that was the storm in parts of the central part of the country that had all that snow back through the southern plains and then moved up into parts of the Great Lakes and the Northeast. And we're now going to see, in the wake of that, behind the system, we're going to see this cold, high-pressure system, that polar vortex, dip into the central plains. So now we have that polar vortex centered over Iowa and Illinois instead of originally earlier in the week, it was over parts of North Dakota and South Dakota. So it did move further south into the east over this week, and it did definitely shift further to the east. This is actually going to be really important. The fact that this system outperformed and was stronger and moved further to the north means that there's more upsetting of colder air, which means that because we had so much warm air out ahead of this, some of these temperatures were in the 60s in the mid-Atlantic, 50s along the coastal northeast. So it was very, very warm with this system, and because there was so much warm air, because you're upwelling so much of that warm air from the south, you're going to need to bring some of that colder air back further to the south as well on the west side of the system. So now we have a much deeper trough than what was originally anticipated because of how strong this system was. So now we have a fairly similar setup with a much deeper high pressure system further south into the east, which means that this entire system is going to shift further south and to the east. So we see your low pressure back through Oklahoma and Texas, and let's play this out. Let's just see what the European model does with this. So it brings up some moisture from the Gulf. You have that 32-degree line, by the way, very, very far to the south. Here's that blue line. That's your 32-degree line. That goes all the way down to the Gulf Coast pretty much. So we have a very cold air mass already in place. The polar vortex by this point is in Ohio and Indiana. So we're definitely seeing a very, very cold high pressure system, and we have a deep trough into the eastern United States. We have snow back through parts of the central and southern plains, and as we continue this forward, you're going to see that we're going to have low pressure form off of the coast of Texas, and that's going to continue to move further to the north and to the east. Some of that snow will continue spreading further north into Missouri and Illinois. This is just one model's projection, but we're going to show you a couple different outcomes and possibilities with this system. This is going to move further north and further east. It stalls out over the central Gulf states, and then this is when it really starts to get moving, when it starts to strengthen a little bit. It's been sitting over the Gulf of Mexico for quite a while by this point. So right now it's over here, and it's been sitting here for quite a while. So it's going to continue moving north and east, and by this point it's actually a fairly strong system. It has fairly strong precipitation rates with this storm. Now, as we zoom into the Mid-Atlantic, the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and even parts of the Northeast as well, we can see that snow spreading up through parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia in that general area. We have some ice setting up along that boundary layer, so we do have to watch out, especially throughout this area, according to this model, right there for some freezing rain. I think the jackpot for freezing rain, unfortunately, will be right throughout this area, so if you live within that area, watch out for the potential of some freezing rain. In fact, that's mainly why they have those winter storm watches up, not really for snowfall, but for freezing rain over some of those areas. Now, You see that snow spreading across parts of Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia into Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania by this point. And then you're going to see this low pressure come out from the southeast. It's back through here. We have another low pressure, which is trying to form back through Alabama by this point. So we have two different low pressures, and this second low pressure is going to bring another resurgence of colder air, of more moist air and more warmer air for some of these areas. And that's going to push that further north and east, and that's going to supply some more energy with this system. So I think you'll get a good thumping of maybe 3 to 6 inches at the start of the system. Then it switches over to sleet or freezing rain for a lot of these areas, except inland. You guys could say mainly all snow for this event. So this looks like a much colder system than what we just dealt with, and that's going to be the main difference. Now, we have more of that snow spreading across parts of the mid-Atlantic up through into the northeast there. So from about Tennessee up through into Long Island there, that's where we're dealing with some of that snow moving up through parts of the northeast and the mid-Atlantic. We have ice still back through the mid-Atlantic there. And now your low pressure is starting to move off of North Carolina, and it's going to continue moving northeastward. We're going to have to watch exactly where that tracks. If it tracks too close to the coast, then many of these areas will be in the rain zone. If this tracks too far away, then you'll be in mostly snow for some of these areas further south, but you won't see any snow further to the north. So we're going to have to watch how powerful this high pressure is, how potent the cold air is, and where exactly the storm does track. So this would be by Thursday, and moving through Friday, you see some of that snow developing through Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, back through all the way up through Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. By that point, we even have some heavier bands of snowfall according to this model, and that ice is now starting to develop further to the north. So now into northern Delaware, parts of southern New Jersey, Maryland, also dealing with some of that ice. Some of the areas that weren't dealing with ice before are now switching over to some sleet or ice. And then as we shift this further to the north and to the east, you see more of that snow blanketing much of the northeast and parts of southern New England. And then that's going to shift further to the north, where you're dealing with more of that snow back through Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, upstate New York by this point. That sleet and freezing rain line is also pushing further to the north, back through the mid-Atlantic, and then up into right around New York City is where you're dealing with that sleet and freezing rain line. And then this pushes away further to the north, and you're dealing with more of that snow pulling away into New England and upstate New York by this point. So this is what the model shows for the total snowfall out of this event. Now we can see that anywhere in the blues has 2 to 6 inches, especially the darker blues is around 4 to 6 inches, and then 6+ inches in the purple. So we can see an area of 4 to 6 inches, mainly for parts of the mid-Atlantic, Tennessee Valley, and into the northeast. Now, this snowfall back through parts of the interior northeast and up through southern Canada and into the Great Lakes is mainly from this system that's currently ongoing. So that doesn't really add on to the totals from this particular storm. So you could basically X this out. Some of these areas might get another 1 to 3 inches of snowfall, but it doesn't look like you're going to be seeing the 6+ inch amounts. That's mainly from this from the system that's currently ongoing. And we also see a few inches back through the southern and central plains, which is still fairly major because these areas further into northern Texas, even as far south as southern and central Texas, are dealing with snowfall. That's not quite typical, even though we just saw that huge winter storm, and that's one of the biggest snowstorms they've seen in 10, 20 years, 30 years in some of those areas. So this is definitely nothing like normal. Usually you're not seeing snow in Houston this time of year, which they just saw a little bit of snowfall. So this is definitely an abnormal pattern with a lot of differences and abnormalities compared to what's normal. So this is another model. This is the NAM model. The NAM model was the only model that was correct with yesterday's storm. So we do want to pay a little bit more closer attention than we normally would to the NAM model. This does include sleet. So watch out this little bracket up top, because that is very important. This includes sleet. So some of this that you're seeing down here, this is not snow, that's sleet. So this is most likely not going to be 10, 15 inches as far south as Mississippi or Louisiana. So I would say basically anywhere north of about this line right here is where you're dealing with the actual snowfall, or mostly snowfall. And you can see that we have a huge area of 12+ inches. We're going to have to watch the validity of that. I don't think at this point, I'm not ready to say that these areas are going to get 12, 14, 16 inches of snowfall just yet. But we do have to watch out for it. If more of the models jump onto that trend, then I'll definitely consider putting up maybe a 6 to 12 inch area in my snowfall forecast. I don't have a snowfall forecast in today's video, but we'll have one most likely by tomorrow. So And this is what the icon model is showing, which is the German model, and we have 2 to 6 inches of snowfall over a wide area from the northeast down through the Tennessee Valley. Again, most of the snow further to the north is from the system that's going on right now, so you can pretty much exit that out. Some of those areas will again get 1 to 3 inches of snowfall, but the heavier snowfall is going to be further to the south, right in throughout this band right there. And here's what the Canadian model is showing with this event. And we're looking at 2 to 3, maybe even 4 or 5 inches of snowfall back through parts of the Tennessee Valley and into the southern and the central plains. And then we're dealing with maybe an area of 6+ inches closer to the mid-Atlantic and the coastal northeast. We're going to, of course, have to keep on watching that. Most of the models have somewhere within this general area under 6+ inches, but we're going to really need to find out where exactly that's going to be. And that's going to be the main objective over the next couple of days, trying to find out where the heaviest snowfall is actually going to set up. And then here's what the National Weather Service is showing. Again, most of this up here is from the current storm, as well as some lake effect added onto that, but most of this further to the south is from the next storm that we're going to be talking about. And they already have some pockets of 6+ inches on some of these on some of the National Weather Service forecasts, all the way up through the northeast, as well as back through some parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, where they have a general 4 to 6 inch area that stretches from Oklahoma and northern Texas all the way up to Massachusetts and Vermont there. So we're definitely going to have to continue watching this, and I'll definitely continue monitoring this and giving you updates on the storm. We'll at least have another couple updates on the system, because it is still really going to start impacting parts of the Tennessee Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. As we get into Thursday is going to be the main day, and then it even will lag into Friday. So by tomorrow, we're going to have your snowfall forecast for this event. In the meantime, if you would like to, and if you enjoy the content, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.